Ambassador Chen Wei stood at the massive viewing window of the Galactic Council's central station, watching the last human transport ship disappear into the void. Behind him, the council chamber buzzed with excited chatter from dozens of alien species, their translator devices creating a symphony of overlapping conversations in 100 different languages. The Zephyrians clicked their mandibles in satisfaction. The Korathi delegation hummed their pleasure songs. Even the usually stoic Vexhai seemed to relax their rigid postures. After 300 years of human involvement in galactic affairs, they were finally free. Good riddance, muttered Counselor Thexare of the Korathi, his forearms gesturing dismissively. No more human stubbornness blocking our progress. No more of their primitive emotional responses interfering with logical decisions. Chen turned from the window, his weathered face showing no emotion. At 67, he had served as Earth's primary ambassador for nearly 2 decades. He had watched civilizations rise and fall, seen species learn to work together, and witnessed the galaxy grow more connected than ever before. Now he was watching it all fall apart. The withdrawal is complete, Chen announced to the assembly. All human military assets have been recalled. Our trade agreements are terminated. Our research partnerships are dissolved. Earth is officially withdrawing from all galactic affairs, effective immediately. The Zephyrian Prime Minister, a towering insect-like being with crystalline wings, stepped forward. Ambassador Chen, surely your species reconsiders this rash decision? The humans have contributed much to our shared prosperity. Chen almost smiled at the irony. For months, these same beings had complained about human involvement in every major decision. They had accused his species of being too aggressive, too unpredictable, too willing to fight when diplomacy failed. The final straw had come 3 weeks ago when the Council voted to censure Earth for its response to Korathi pirates attacking civilian freighters. The humans had sent warships to stop the attacks. They had disabled the pirate vessels and arrested their crews. No one was killed, but the Council declared it an excessive use of force and typical human aggression. They demanded Earth pay reparations to the pirates' families and submit to Council oversight of all human military operations. Earth's response had been swift and final: withdrawal. The decision is made, Chen replied. Earth wishes you all prosperity and peace. As Chen gathered his belongings, Deputy Council Leader Vexhai Moore approached. The tall, gray-skinned being moved with the fluid grace typical of his species. Ambassador, I confess I do not understand this human concept of pride. Your emotional attachment to independence seems inefficient. Chen looked up at the alien, whose people had evolved beyond most emotions millions of years ago. Maybe that's the problem, Moore. You see our independence as pride. We see your dependence on committee decisions as weakness. The Vexhai tilted his head, genuinely curious. Dependence on collective wisdom is logical. Individual action leads to chaos. Individual action leads to results, Chen corrected. When the hegemony attacked the Outer Rim colonies, who responded first? When the plague hit Kepler Station, who sent medical aid before the Council finished debating? When raiders threatened the trade routes, who cleared them out while you were still forming committees? Moore's large black eyes blinked slowly. Humans acted quickly, yes. But without proper consideration of consequences. We acted while people were dying, Chen said simply. That's the difference between us. The ambassador walked through the station's corridors one final time, passing shops run by dozens of species, restaurants serving food from 100 worlds, and children of various races playing together in the common areas. All of this existed because someone had been willing to fight for it, to build it, to protect it. Often, that someone had been human. At the docking bay, Captain Sarah Morrison waited beside a sleek diplomatic shuttle. The young woman had served as Chen's aide for 3 years and had become like a daughter to him. Her expression was carefully neutral, but he could see the anger burning behind her eyes. Captain, are you ready for departure? Chen asked formally. Yes, sir, she replied. All personnel are accounted for. The last of our embassy staff boarded 20 minutes ago. As they walked toward the shuttle, Morrison couldn't hold back any longer. Sir, this is insane. They're throwing away 3 centuries of cooperation over politics. Don't they realize what humans have done for galactic stability? Chen stopped walking. Around them, alien travelers hurried past, most avoiding eye contact with the humans. Some whispered among themselves, pointing at the withdrawing Earth delegation. Captain, what was the first thing humans did when we achieved faster-than-light travel? Chen asked. Morrison looked confused by the question. We explored, sir. We made contact with other species. Wrong, Chen said gently. The first thing we did was build warships. Every other species in this galaxy achieved FTL through cooperation, through shared knowledge, through peaceful development. We built our first starships assuming we'd need to fight. That proved correct, sir. The galaxy was a dangerous place when we arrived. Chen nodded slowly. It was. Pirates controlled the outer systems. The hegemony was expanding aggressively. Trade routes were unsafe. Colonies were being raided or abandoned. The council spent decades debating solutions while people suffered. They continued walking as Chen spoke. Do you know what changed everything, Captain? The Battle of Kepler 7. A human fleet engaging 3 hegemony dreadnoughts to protect a civilian station. We lost 2 ships and 400 crew members, but we saved 20,000 civilians of 7 different species. Morrison knew the story. Every human child learned about Kepler 7 in school. Admiral Zhang's famous last transmission, Earth fleet engaging. Civilian evacuation is priority 1. Tell them we were here. After Kepler 7, everything changed, Chen continued. Suddenly, every species wanted human protection. Human trade agreements. Human security guarantees. We became the galaxy's police force, its army, its emergency response team. And we did it gladly because it was the right thing to do. They reached the shuttle, but Chen paused before boarding. The council grew comfortable with human protection, Captain. They started taking it for granted. They began to see our strength as aggression, our quick responses as recklessness. They forgot that peace requires someone willing to fight for it. So we're abandoning them? Morrison asked. Just walking away and letting the galaxy burn? Chen looked back through the docking bay windows at the massive station. Representatives from over 200 species lived and worked here in relative safety and prosperity. Trade flowed freely between systems that had been at war for millennia before human intervention. Scientific knowledge was shared openly in ways that would have been impossible without human-enforced peace. We're not abandoning them, Captain, Chen said quietly. We're letting them discover what they really want. Do they want the safety and prosperity that comes with having someone willing to fight for justice? Or do they want the moral comfort of never having to make hard decisions? As their shuttle detached from the station, Morrison watched the massive structure shrink in the viewscreen. What do you think will happen, sir? Chen was quiet for a long moment. In the distance, they could see the last human patrol ships leaving their stations along the trade routes. Space lanes that had been protected for decades were now empty. I think they're about to remember why they needed us in the first place, he said finally. 3 days after the human withdrawal, the first reports reached the Galactic Council. Pirate attacks had resumed in the outer systems. Raiders were hitting merchant vessels along previously safe trade routes. Several colony worlds reported increased bandit activity. Councillor Thexra dismissed the reports during the emergency session. Minor incidents, he declared. Local law enforcement can handle such matters. We do not need human militarism to address simple criminal activity. But the reports kept coming. A passenger liner hijacked near the Vega system. A scientific research station raided and stripped of equipment. A humanitarian convoy attacked while delivering medical supplies to a plague-stricken world. The council formed committees. They drafted strongly worded condemnations. They held emergency sessions and passed resolutions. The attacks continued. Within a week, interstellar commerce had dropped by 30%. Insurance rates for civilian shipping skyrocketed. Several species began withdrawing their vessels from the most dangerous routes. On the 10th day after human withdrawal, long-range sensors detected something that made every council member's blood run cold: a massive fleet moving through the outer rim. Ship signatures matched hegemony design patterns, but these vessels were larger and more advanced than anything previously recorded. The hegemony had been quiet for nearly 50 years, contained behind their borders by the threat of human retaliation. Intelligence reports suggested they had spent those decades building, planning, and waiting for exactly this moment. Ambassador Chen received the emergency transmission while reviewing personnel files in his temporary office on Luna. The message was from Deputy Council Leader Moore, and it was brief: Ambassador, the Council requests immediate consultation regarding recent developments in galactic security. Chen deleted the message without responding. 2 hours later, another message arrived, this one from the Zephyrian Prime Minister: Esteemed Ambassador, perhaps we can discuss a limited resumption of certain cooperative arrangements? Chen deleted that one too. The third message came from Councillor Thexra himself: Chen, we may have been hasty. The Council is prepared to discuss modifications to our previous positions. Chen finally responded to that one: the Earth government wishes you success in resolving your local difficulties. On Luna's surface, construction crews were already at work expanding the orbital shipyards. Admiral Harrison, head of Earth's Stellar Navy, had begun recalling ships from distant patrol routes the moment the withdrawal order came through. Those vessels were now being refitted and upgraded. Admiral, Chen said during their morning briefing, what's the current status of our defensive preparations? Harrison, a stern woman in her 50s, consulted her tablet. All Earth system defenses are at full readiness. The Luna shipyards are operating at maximum capacity. We've completed construction on 12 new destroyer-class vessels and 6 cruisers. The new dreadnought design should be ready for production within 60 days. And our intelligence on hegemony movements? They're mobilizing everything, Harrison said grimly. Our long-range reconnaissance suggests they're preparing for a major expansion. Target assessment indicates they'll move on the outer rim colonies first, then push toward the core systems. Chen nodded. It was exactly what human military analysts had predicted 3 years ago, when they first recommended increased defensive preparations. The Council had rejected those recommendations as unnecessarily provocative and typical human paranoia. Timeline for first contact with Council forces? Chen asked. Based on current hegemony fleet movements, first engagement should occur within 72 hours. The Council's combined fleets have about 18 hours of effective resistance before complete tactical failure. Through his office window, Chen could see Earth's blue surface rotating slowly below. Somewhere down there, families were going about their daily lives, unaware that the galaxy was about to discover the difference between human protection and human absence. His communication console chimed again. This time it was a direct emergency channel reserved for galaxy-wide crises. The transmission came from the Galactic Council's Supreme Emergency Session. Ambassador Chen, came the voice of Council President Zexera, her usual composure replaced by barely controlled panic. The Council formally requests immediate military assistance from Earth forces. We are prepared to discuss full restoration of previous agreements and significant modifications to past decisions. Chen looked at Admiral Harrison, who raised an eyebrow. Your response, sir? Chen activated the communication link. President Zexera, Earth appreciates the Council's communication. However, the withdrawal of human forces was conducted at the Council's strong suggestion. Our ships are no longer in position to provide assistance. Ambassador, please, Zexera's voice cracked slightly. The hegemony fleet is massive. Our combined forces cannot match their numbers or firepower. Civilian populations are at risk. I'm certain the Council's collective wisdom will find an appropriate solution, Chen replied. Earth wishes you success in your endeavors. He ended the transmission and turned back to Admiral Harrison. Admiral, I want continuous monitoring of all hegemony fleet movements. If they approach Earth space, we defend ourselves. Otherwise, we observe. Understood, sir. And if Council forces request specific assistance? Chen was quiet for a long moment, watching Earth turn below them. 300 years ago, his ancestors had looked up at these same stars and dreamed of exploring them, of finding new friends among the cosmos. They had found friends, but they had also found that friendship sometimes required being willing to fight when others would not. Admiral, what happens when you remove the guard dog from a sheep pen? The wolves come back, sir. Exactly. The galaxy is about to remember why sheep need dogs. The first hegemony attack came exactly 71 hours after Chen's final communication with the Council. The target was New Geneva, a peaceful agricultural world in the outer rim that supplied food to dozens of star systems. The colony had no military defenses beyond a small security force designed to handle civilian emergencies. The hegemony fleet arrived without warning. 37 warships dropped out of hyperspace and immediately began orbital bombardment of the planet's infrastructure. Communications arrays, power generators, transportation hubs, and government buildings were systematically destroyed from space. Then came the landing forces. Captain Sarah Morrison watched the intelligence report streaming across her screen in the human observation post at the edge of the system. The monitoring station was cloaked and positioned far enough away to avoid detection, but their sensors could track everything happening around New Geneva. Captain, incoming transmission from the surface, reported Lieutenant Kim, the station's communications officer. It's Governor Hassan. Morrison knew Hassan personally. The man had served as Earth's agricultural attaché before accepting the position on New Geneva. His wife was human, his children had been born on the colony. They were among the 30,000 humans living on New Geneva when the attack began. Put him through, Morrison ordered. Hassan's voice came through filled with static and desperation. Any Earth forces, please respond. New Geneva is under attack. Repeat, New Geneva is under attack. Hegemony ground forces have landed. They're targeting civilian population centers. We have families here. Children. Please, if anyone can hear this. Morrison's hand hovered over the communication controls. Her orders were clear: observe and report. Do not engage. Do not reveal the monitoring station's position. Earth was officially neutral in galactic conflicts now. Captain, Lieutenant Kim said quietly, should I respond? Morrison watched her tactical display as hegemony dropships landed across New Geneva's major cities. Red symbols marked enemy positions as they spread across the planet's surface like a disease. Negative, she said finally. Continue monitoring. The attack on New Geneva lasted 18 hours. When it was over, the planet's infrastructure lay in ruins. The hegemony had captured key facilities and enslaved or killed most of the population. Those who escaped fled into the wilderness or managed to reach evacuation ships during the brief windows when hegemony forces were occupied elsewhere. Governor Hassan's final transmission came 12 hours into the attack. This is New Geneva Colony. We are overrun. If anyone receives this message, tell Earth, tell them we held the line as long as we could. Tell our families we never forgot we were human. Morrison had to leave the command center after that. She found herself in the station's small observation deck, staring out at the distant planet where thousands of humans were dead or enslaved. Behind her, she could hear Lieutenant Kim briefing the next shift on tactical developments. 3 hours later, Admiral Harrison's face appeared on Morrison's personal communication screen. The Admiral looked tired, older than Morrison remembered. Captain Morrison, I've reviewed your reports from New Geneva. Excellent work maintaining operational security under difficult circumstances. Thank you, Admiral, Morrison replied, though the words felt like ash in her mouth. I'm ordering your station to relocate immediately. Long-range sensors indicate the hegemony is moving toward the Centauri cluster. Intelligence suggests their next target will be either Sanctuary Station or the industrial world of Kepler Prime. Morrison felt her stomach clench. Sanctuary Station was a massive civilian facility housing over 2 million beings from dozens of species. It served as a refugee center, a medical facility, and a cultural exchange hub. Kepler Prime manufactured essential supplies for half the galaxy's colonies. Admiral, surely the Council will mount some defense of those targets? Harrison's expression was grim. The Council has assembled a fleet of 68 ships from 12 different species. They're calling it the largest combined force in galactic history. That sounds promising, Morrison said, though Harrison's tone suggested otherwise. Captain, the Hegemony fleet now numbers over 400 ships. They've been building for 50 years while the Council believed peace would last forever. The combined Council fleet has maybe 6 hours of fighting time before they're completely overwhelmed. Morrison closed her eyes. What are our orders, Admiral? Continue monitoring and reporting. Document everything. Earth needs a complete record of what happens when humanity steps back from galactic affairs. The battle for Sanctuary Station began 2 days later. Morrison's relocated observation post had a clear view of the engagement through long-range sensors and intercepted communications. The Council fleet arrived first, positioning themselves in a defensive formation around the massive civilian station. Morrison had to admit the formation looked impressive, dozens of ships from across the galaxy united in common defense. Zephyrian crystal ships with their elegant curves, Korathi heavy cruisers built for endurance, Vex-high vessels that looked more like geometric art than warships, and smaller contingents from species Morrison couldn't even identify. Admiral Kethvar of the Zephyrian fleet commanded the combined forces. His tactical broadcasts painted an optimistic picture: all ships maintain defensive positions. Our combined firepower should be sufficient to repel hegemony forces. Remember, we fight not just for our individual species, but for the principles of peace and cooperation that bind our alliance. Morrison found herself hoping they were right. Maybe the Council forces would surprise everyone. Maybe unity and determination could overcome numerical disadvantage. The hegemony arrived 6 hours later. Morrison watched her sensors as over 300 ships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation. Where the Council fleet looked like a collection of individual vessels working together, the hegemony fleet moved like a single organism. Every ship was identical, every movement coordinated, every action part of a larger design. The battle lasted 17 minutes. The hegemony opened with a coordinated barrage that overwhelmed the Council fleet's shields and scattered their formation. Council ships tried to reform and counterattack, but they lacked the coordination and firepower to penetrate hegemony defenses. Morrison listened to the tactical communications as the Council fleet fell apart. Korathi wing, we've lost main engines. Cannot maintain position. Zephyrian command ship is down. Admiral Kethvar is not responding. All ships, retreat. Repeat, all ships retreat. This position is not sustainable. But there was nowhere to retreat to. The hegemony fleet had surrounded the station and was systematically destroying every Council ship that tried to escape. Within 20 minutes, the combined galactic fleet was reduced to scattered debris and a handful of severely damaged vessels fleeing into hyperspace. The hegemony then turned their attention to Sanctuary Station. "Attention Sanctuary Station," came the hegemony commander's cold voice over the communications frequencies. "You will surrender immediately and prepare for occupation. Any resistance will result in the complete destruction of your facility and all aboard." Morrison watched in horror as hegemony boarding parties attached to the station's docking ports. The massive civilian facility had no weapons, no defenses, no way to resist. 2 million innocent beings were about to become prisoners or worse. Her communication console chimed with an incoming message. The transmission was coming from Sanctuary Station itself, from someone using emergency override codes. "Unknown monitoring station, this is Dr. Elena Rodriguez aboard Sanctuary Station. I know you're out there. I can see your scanning signatures on our passive sensors." Morrison hesitated. Dr. Rodriguez was the station's chief medical officer, a human who had dedicated her life to providing free medical care to refugee populations across the galaxy. "Elena, this is Captain Morrison. I'm here, but I can't help you." "Sarah? Sarah Morrison from the embassy staff?" Relief flooded Rodriguez's voice. "Thank God. Listen, we have over 50,000 human civilians on this station. Families, children, elderly people who came here seeking medical treatment. The hegemony is boarding now. They're separating humans from other species. Morrison's blood ran cold. Separating them how? They're putting humans in isolation pods. We don't know why, but intelligence suggests the hegemony considers humans the primary threat to their expansion. Sarah, they're going to execute them. All of them. Morrison looked at her tactical display. Her observation post had a skeleton crew of 12 people and no offensive weapons. Even if she violated orders and tried to help, there was nothing she could do against hundreds of hegemony ships. Elena, I'm sorry. I can't, Sarah, my daughter is here. Maria, she's only 8 years old. She came here for treatment after an accident on Luna. She's scared and asking for her mother, and I can't even hold her because they've separated us. Please, isn't there anything you can do? Morrison closed her eyes, feeling the weight of 300 years of human military tradition pressing down on her shoulders. Every instinct screamed at her to act, to fight, to do something other than watch innocent people suffer. Elena, I need you to listen carefully. In exactly 6 hours, you need to be ready to move quickly. Get all the humans together if you can. Be prepared for emergency evacuation. Sarah, what are you planning? Morrison was already activating her ship's communication array, preparing to send a coded message to Admiral Harrison. Elena, I'm probably ending my career, but I'll be damned if I sit here and watch children die while I follow orders. Her message to Admiral Harrison was brief: Admiral, respectfully requesting permission to deviate from observation protocols. Sanctuary Station civilian population includes over 50,000 human nationals facing immediate execution. Cannot in good conscience maintain passive stance. Harrison's reply came back within minutes: Captain Morrison, your request is denied. You will maintain current position and continue monitoring. These are direct orders from Earth Command. Morrison stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it. She turned to Lieutenant Kim, who had been quietly monitoring her conversation with Rodriguez. Lieutenant, what are the Academy's core principles regarding protection of human civilians? Kim straightened in his chair. No human civilian will be abandoned in hostile territory if rescue is tactically feasible, regardless of political considerations. And what is our current tactical situation? Kim consulted his instruments. Hegemony forces are concentrated around the station. Their patrol ships are focused on debris cleanup and prisoner transport. The monitoring station has full stealth capabilities and could potentially approach undetected. Morrison nodded. Lieutenant, I'm about to violate direct orders from Earth Command. Anyone who participates will face court-martial. Anyone who wants to transfer off this mission should speak now. The bridge was quiet for several seconds. Then, Lieutenant Kim spoke for everyone. Captain, the hegemony has 50,000 hostages. We have a ship. Seems like simple math to me. Morrison looked around at her crew, 12 men and women who had sworn an oath to protect human life and uphold human values. They were looking at her with the same expression she had seen on the faces of heroes in the history books. All right then, she said, settling into the command chair. Let's go remind the galaxy what happens when you threaten human civilians. As the observation post moved toward Sanctuary Station under full stealth, Morrison activated the ship's internal communication system. All hands, this is the captain. In approximately 5 hours, we will be conducting a rescue operation against overwhelming enemy forces. Our mission is to extract human civilians from a hostile environment. Our chances of survival are minimal. She paused, looking out at the space around Sanctuary Station, where hegemony ships moved like sharks around wounded prey. But our chances of living with ourselves if we do nothing are zero. These people trusted the galaxy to protect them. The galaxy failed. Now it's up to us to remind everyone that humans don't abandon their own. The ship's chronometer showed 5 hours and 37 minutes until the rescue attempt. Morrison settled in to wait, knowing that in a few hours, 12 humans were about to take on an entire fleet to save people they had never met. Because that's what humans did when the galaxy turned its back on innocence. The hegemony was about to learn why walking away from human protection was the galaxy's worst mistake. Captain Morrison's ship approached Sanctuary Station with all stealth systems at maximum. The observation post was designed for covert operations, equipped with technology that bent light around the hull and dampened energy signatures. To hegemony sensors, they should appear as nothing more than background radiation. Distance to station? Morrison asked quietly. 2,000 kilometers and, closing, Lieutenant Kim reported. Hegemony patrol patterns show a gap in coverage on the station's lower docking ring. Window of opportunity opens in 12 minutes. Morrison studied the tactical display. Sanctuary Station was massive, nearly 20 kilometers long and 5 kilometers wide. The hegemony had docked dozens of ships along its length, turning the civilian facility into a temporary military base. Somewhere inside that captured station, 50,000 humans waited to die. Communication from Dr. Rodriguez, reported Ensign Martinez at the communications station. Put her through, Morrison ordered. Sarah, they're moving fast, Rodriguez's voice was tight with fear. They've got the humans separated into sections 7 through 12. Children and elderly in section 7, adults in the others. Heavy guard presence. I think they're planning to start executions within the hour. Morrison felt ice in her stomach. Elena, can you get everyone to section 7? The children's area? Maybe. The guards are mostly focused on the adults. They think children can't cause trouble. Why section 7? Morrison looked at her tactical officer. Lieutenant Yates was the youngest member of her crew, barely 25, but he had graduated top of his class in combat engineering. What's the situation on section 7, Lieutenant? Yates consulted his scanner readings. Section 7 has direct access to docking port 12. Minimal guard presence. But, Captain, that section can hold maybe 200 people maximum. We can't evacuate 50,000 humans through a single docking port. Morrison nodded grimly. She had known from the beginning that a complete evacuation was impossible. Her ship could carry perhaps 300 people in emergency conditions. But 300 was better than 0. Elena, listen carefully. Get as many children as possible to section 7. Anyone under 16, plus their parents if possible. We can take maybe 200 people. The silence on the communication link stretched for several seconds. Sarah, there are over 8,000 children on this station. Morrison closed her eyes. In her mind, she could see the faces of those children, innocent beings from dozens of worlds who had come to Sanctuary Station seeking medical care or escaping conflicts. Most would die today. I know, Elena. Save who you can. We'll do what we can. What about the others? The adults, the elderly, the children we can't fit? Morrison looked around her bridge at the 11 other humans preparing to risk their lives for people they had never met. Elena, I want you to record a message. Everything that's happening here. Everything the hegemony is doing. Make sure it gets transmitted to every corner of the galaxy. Sarah, what are you thinking? I'm thinking the galaxy needs to see the cost of abandoning humanity. And the cost of humanity abandoning them. The approach to Sanctuary Station took 37 minutes. Morrison's ship slipped through the gap in hegemony patrols and attached to docking port 12 with barely a whisper of contact. Emergency airlocks sealed with soft hisses, and Morrison found herself looking at Dr. Elena Rodriguez for the first time in 3 years. Rodriguez was younger than Morrison remembered, maybe 40, with dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and the steady hands of someone who spent her life saving lives. Behind her, Morrison could see a crowd of human civilians, families clutching children, elderly people helped along by younger relatives, teenagers trying to look brave while terror showed in their eyes. Sarah, Rodriguez said quietly, I got everyone I could. 237 people. Mostly children under 12 with their parents. Morrison looked past her at the faces in the crowd. A little girl maybe 6 years old clung to her mother's hand, wide eyes taking in the strange ship. An elderly man helped his grandson walk on unsteady legs. A teenage boy held his baby sister while their parents carried survival bags. Elena, where are the others? The ones who couldn't come? Rodriguez's face was stone. Section 9. The hegemony is using them for something they call compliance testing. We think they're trying to determine which humans might resist their occupation. Anyone who shows signs of defiance. She didn't finish the sentence. Morrison felt rage building in her chest, the same cold fury that had driven human warriors for thousands of years. How long do we have? Maybe 20 minutes before they realize people are missing from Section 7. Once they start looking, they'll find your ship. Morrison turned to Lieutenant Kim. Begin evacuation immediately. Get these people aboard and secure them for combat maneuvers. Captain, Kim said quietly, what combat maneuvers? We're an observation ship. We have no weapons systems. Morrison smiled, and Rodriguez later said it was the most terrifying expression she had ever seen on a human face. Lieutenant, we may not have weapons, but we have something better. We have human imagination. The evacuation took 18 minutes. Morrison watched from the bridge as families filed through the airlock, parents carrying children and belongings, elderly people helped along by volunteers. Each face that passed was another life saved, another small victory against the darkness. Dr. Rodriguez was the last to board. As she stepped onto Morrison's ship, she turned back towards Sanctuary Station's corridors. Sarah, there are still 8,000 children in there. 50,000 humans total. I know, Morrison replied. Elena, I need you to help our medical officer with the evacuees. We're going to need everyone secured for emergency maneuvers. What kind of maneuvers? Morrison was already heading for the bridge. The kind that get people home. On the bridge, Lieutenant Yates looked up from his engineering console. Captain, I've been analyzing the hegemony ships around the station. Their power distribution suggests they're running skeleton crews. Most of their personnel are aboard the station conducting operations. How skeleton? Morrison asked. Maybe 20% normal crew on most vessels. They're confident nobody would attack them here. Morrison studied the tactical display. 43 hegemony warships surrounded Sanctuary Station, each one capable of destroying her small ship with a single shot. But they were spread out, focused on controlling the station rather than defending against external threats. Lieutenant Kim, send a message to Admiral Harrison. Full tactical report on our situation and current evacuation status. Yes, Captain. Any specific message? Morrison thought for a moment. Tell the Admiral that Captain Morrison and crew are performing their duty as human officers. Tell him we remember our oath. The message was sent, and Morrison knew Harrison would understand. Every human officer swore the same oath, to protect human life, uphold human values, and never abandon those in need. Sometimes that oath conflicted with orders. Today, the oath won. Captain Ensign Martinez called from communications, incoming transmission from the hegemony flagship. They're demanding our surrender. Put them on screen. The viewscreen flickered to show a hegemony commander, his pale face marked with the ritual scars that denoted high rank. Behind him, Morrison could see the bridge of a massive warship bristling with weapons. Human vessel, you will surrender immediately and prepare for boarding. Your interference with hegemony operations will not be tolerated. Morrison stepped forward where the alien commander could see her clearly. Commander, this is Captain Sarah Morrison of the Earth Observation Ship Vigilance. I demand the immediate release of all human civilians aboard Sanctuary Station. The hegemony commander's face showed what might have been amusement. Captain Morrison, you are in no position to make demands. Your ship is surrounded by 43 warships. Your situation is hopeless. Maybe, Morrison replied. But, here's the thing about hopeless situations, Commander. They tend to bring out the best in humans. She gestured to Lieutenant Yates, who activated a system Morrison hoped she would never need to use. You see, Commander, this ship carries something your intelligence reports probably didn't mention. Every Earth observation vessel is equipped with a fusion self-destruct system. Yield equivalent to a small star going nova. The hegemony commander's expression changed. You would not dare. You have civilians aboard your vessel. Morrison's smile never wavered. Commander, these civilians chose to board a ship they knew was vastly outnumbered by enemy forces. They chose to risk their lives rather than submit to slavery. That's what humans do. She paused, letting her words sink in. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to release every human aboard Sanctuary Station. You're going to allow them to board evacuation ships. And you're going to let those ships depart safely. And if we refuse? Morrison gestured again, and the bridge lights dimmed as power was diverted to the self-destruct system. Then, in approximately 3 minutes, this ship will detonate with the force of a small sun. The explosion will destroy your flagship, probably take out 6 or 7 other ships, and turn a significant portion of Sanctuary Station into radioactive debris. The alien commander leaned forward. You would kill your own civilians to spite us? No, Commander. I would kill your ship to save them. See, that's the difference between humans and everyone else in this galaxy. When we have to choose between dying free and living as slaves, we choose to die free. Every time. Morrison turned to Dr. Rodriguez, who was standing at the back of the bridge. Elena, would you explain to this gentleman what happened at Earth's Alamo? Rodriguez stepped forward. Commander, over 500 years ago, a small group of human soldiers held a fortified position against an army of thousands. They knew they could not win. They knew they would all die. But they fought anyway, because their sacrifice bought time for others to escape. Today, Morrison added, my crew and I are those soldiers. The question is whether you want to be remembered as the commander who lost 7 ships and gained nothing, or the one who showed mercy to civilians. The hegemony commander was quiet for several seconds. Morrison could see him calculating odds, weighing options, trying to determine if she was bluffing. Lieutenant Yates, Morrison called without taking her eyes off the screen, status on the self-destruct sequence? 2 minutes 30 seconds, Captain. All systems armed and ready. The alien commander finally spoke. Captain Morrison, even if I were to agree to your demands, my government would never accept such surrender to terrorist tactics. Morrison laughed, a sound that made every human on the bridge feel proud and every alien who heard it feel afraid. Commander, we're not terrorists. We're humans. There's a difference. She stepped closer to the screen. Terrorists kill innocents to make a point. We're offering to die to save innocents. That's called heroism, and it's something your species wouldn't understand. 1 minute 40 seconds, Captain, Lieutenant Yates reported. On the screen, Morrison could see activity on the hegemony bridge as officers consulted displays and argued in their harsh language. Finally, the commander turned back to her. Captain Morrison, I cannot release all human prisoners. My orders are specific. But I can offer a compromise. Morrison waited. I will allow your ship to depart with its current passengers. In return, you will transmit the shutdown codes for your self-destruct system. Morrison looked around her bridge at the faces of her crew. Lieutenant Kim nodded slightly. Ensign Martinez gave her a thumbs up. Lieutenant Yates simply said, whatever you decide, Captain, we're with you. Negative, Commander. All humans aboard the station, or we detonate. 1 minute, Captain, Yates reported. The hegemony commander's composure finally cracked. Captain Morrison, you are insane. You cannot seriously intend to kill yourself and your passengers over principles. Morrison turned to look at the families crowded into her ship's corridors. Children pressed against viewports, trying to see the station where their friends were still trapped. Parents held their children close, knowing those children were only free because 12 humans had chosen to risk everything. Commander, Morrison said quietly, let me tell you something about humans. We're the species that builds lifeboats with only enough room for our children. We're the ones who run into burning buildings while everyone else runs out. We're the species that says not one more when evil tries to claim innocent lives. She straightened her uniform and looked directly into the alien's eyes. Today, 12 humans are saying not one more to your entire fleet. The question is whether you're willing to lose ships over your pride. 30 seconds, Captain. The hegemony commander closed his eyes. When he opened them, Morrison saw something she hadn't expected: respect. Captain Morrison, I hereby authorize the release of all human prisoners aboard Sanctuary Station. They will be transferred to evacuation vessels under escort. Your ship will be permitted to depart. Morrison felt relief flood through her body, but she kept her expression neutral. Thank you, Commander. Lieutenant Yates, abort self-destruct sequence. Self-destruct aborted, Captain. All systems returning to normal. As Morrison's ship departed Sanctuary Station with its cargo of rescued civilians, she watched through the viewscreen as evacuation ships collected the remaining humans. 50,000 people who had been facing death were now free, flying toward safe harbors in ships provided by the hegemony themselves. Dr. Rodriguez joined Morrison on the bridge as they entered hyperspace. Sarah, why did they let us go? Why did they give in to our demands? Morrison was quiet for a moment, watching the stars shift as they jumped to lightspeed. Elena, for the past 3 months, the galaxy has been discovering what happens when humans walk away. Today, the hegemony discovered what happens when humans come back. But Morrison's rescue was only the beginning. Within hours of the Sanctuary Station incident, recordings of the confrontation had spread across the galaxy. Every species saw the same thing: 12 humans in an unarmed ship facing down an entire fleet to save civilians. On Earth, Admiral Harrison received Morrison's full report along with tactical data from the rescue. He forwarded both to President Kim with a single note: Madam President, the galaxy is calling. The first official response came from the Zephyrian government. The Republic formally requests renewal of defensive cooperation agreements with Earth. Terms negotiable. The second came from the Korathi: we acknowledge previous errors in judgment regarding human military policies. Immediate consultation requested. The third came from over 50 species simultaneously: emergency galactic assembly requested to address growing hegemony threat. Human participation essential. President Kim's response was broadcast galaxy-wide. Earth notes the Galactic Council's messages. However, recent events demonstrate that our previous cooperation was taken for granted and our contributions dismissed as aggression. If the galaxy wishes to renew partnerships with humanity, certain conditions must be acknowledged. The conditions were simple but non-negotiable. Human military doctrine would be respected, not questioned. Human officers would have full authority in combat situations. And never again would humans be asked to stand down while innocents suffered. The Galactic Council accepted these conditions within 6 hours. 3 weeks later, Admiral Harrison stood on the bridge of the Earth Defense Force flagship Indomitable, leading a human fleet toward the hegemony home systems. Beside her, Admiral Chen Wei commanded the largest combined galactic fleet in history, over 2,000 ships from 47 species, all flying under human tactical command. The Battle of Hegemony Prime lasted 4 days. When it was over, the aggressive species that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries was broken forever. Their worlds were liberated, their fleets scattered, and their military capacity destroyed. But the most important victory happened in the aftermath. As human medical ships tended to wounded beings of dozens of species, as human engineers repaired damaged alien vessels, as human soldiers shared their rations with former enemies, the galaxy remembered something it had forgotten. Peace wasn't the absence of conflict. Peace was what happened when good people were willing to fight for it. Captain Morrison, promoted to admiral after her actions at Sanctuary Station, stood with Ambassador Chen Wei on the observation deck of Sanctuary Station 6 months later. The facility had been rebuilt and expanded, now serving more refugees than ever before. Children of 100 species played in the corridors, protected by the knowledge that humans stood guard. Admiral Morrison, Chen said, "Do you ever regret what happened? The crisis, the withdrawal, all the lives lost?" Morrison watched a human child teaching alien youngsters how to play an Earth game in the station's central plaza. Ambassador, I regret every life that was lost. But, I don't regret what we learned. Which was? Morrison smiled. The galaxy learned that they needed us. And, we learned that walking away isn't protecting anyone. Sometimes you have to stand in the darkness so others can live in the light. Chen nodded slowly. The galaxy won't forget again? Morrison looked out at the space around Sanctuary Station, where human ships patrolled alongside vessels from dozens of allied species. They might, Ambassador. But, we'll be here to remind them. In the distance, Earth's sun shone steady and bright, a beacon of hope in a galaxy that had learned the hard way what happened when humans walked away from those who needed protection. The galaxy was safe again. And, this time, it knew who was keeping it that way.